Croydon, August the 8th. A man tries to escape the riots. Unsuccessfully.
You know, it's not just about a bobby on the beat.
Was there any sense in metropolitan police circles, to your knowledge?
It's actually getting to know what's actually going on in your area. If they walk round all day long, so we see them.
Of a level of underlying anger among small numbers of the youth of London.
That's very nice, but they also could do other things. So where do you prioritise, where do you put the police? They've only got a certain number. And that again comes down to who's in charge of the police at the time. Where do you put your resources?
2021 marks 10 years since the death of Mark Duggan, who was sadly killed by a police officer back in the summer of 2011.
Mr. Duggan was shot twice as he got out of the silver Toyota people carrier. A passer-by filmed the immediate aftermath.
Someone just got shot,
The officer trying to resuscitate him, known as V53, was the same officer who had pulled the trigger. That anger led to days of rioting and millions of pounds worth of damage to the economy, costing homes, businesses and lives.
Despite this taking place in Tottenham, the whole country reacted, creating what was known as the 2011 England riots.
Neighbourhoods previously untouched by the rioting of the past 3 days are now joining an ever-growing list of unruly suburbs. The lawlessness has spread across the capital, and what was originally fuelled by anger over the fatal shooting of Mark Duggan by police officers on Thursday night seems to have turned into attacks on property for the sake of seeing them destroyed.
I mean, everything was just engulfed in smoke, although this one didn't burn to the ground, and the fire brigade and everybody did a great to save this building. It was still, you know, one building was completely destroyed, and this building was, every window was broken, it was all full of smoke, and it was, you know, luckily it didn't actually burn. It goes into a bit of a blur. Like, I haven't got any individual things, but I haven't got any cross to bear with the police. I think they have a really difficult job to do, and they did the best they possibly could.
There's always been that, you know, gap, you know, between young people and police officers of stop and search problems and, you know, human rights, how they're being treated. But I think since the riots, yeah, the gap's increased.
My name is Tyrell Davis Duglin, but I also go by the name Mr. Prospect, and I'm a youth activist from Croydon. I'm also a self-appointed ambassador for young people and aspiring entrepreneur. To perform a stop and search, so when I say they have superpowers, the police are allowed to touch you when you don't want them to touch you. That's their superpower. It means touching you without consent. Do you guys know what consent means? I've been a youth activist in Croydon and a voice for the youth of Croydon for a long time now, for about the past 3 years as a self-appointed ambassador. And part of that included educating young people on their law, their rights, just so that they can stop being violated by police, because it was a point out where after school, me and my friends would be stopped and searched outside a chicken shop. Like, very often, to the point where I actually, at 17 years old, I had to go online, research law, find out my own rights myself about getting detained and stuff like that, so that I could avoid myself getting detained when there's illegal grounds and stuff being used. Since young, I've been getting worse as I've got older, not because of necessarily anything on my behalf. I've had more negative interactions with the police since starting my position as a youth consultant with the Greater London Authority than I had when I was actually out on the roads. My worst interaction would be they actually broke my finger. This knuckle is no longer in place anymore. I was accused of breaching COVID legislation, of being out when I shouldn't have been, and for that reason they came, tackled me to the floor. My hand was broken in the process, but I didn't know at this point that my hand was broken. Everything was numb. At one point my body was actually wanted to react to it like in a fighting manner, because I didn't understand why I was being treated so rough. And in the past, when I've been arrested, an officer arrested me and he was being really rough even though I wasn't resisting. And when he had put cuffs on me, I said, why are you moving like, why are you being so rough for even though I'm not resisting? He said the last time someone surrendered to him, it was a full surrender, and when he got close, he turned around and went to swing like a blade at his face. And I said, fair enough, I understand that, but I'm not that person in it, so you're basically criminalizing me or thinking that I'm gonna do the same thing, so you're discriminating against me, treating me in a certain manner. And I'm not sure if this officer, who still hasn't been identified by the way, had the same kind of experiences, but he tackled me to the floor to the point where I was thinking I need to fight this guy. Like, I stood up at one point and was looking at him. He's just, you know when they're just holding onto your leg, you're just holding onto my leg so I couldn't run. And I was just looking at him thinking, I'm not even a criminal, I haven't even done anything, and you're moving like this.
You just don't ever know what kind of day a policeman or policewoman's been in before you have a little conversation or encounter with them.
There's been many times in the past where I've been approached by police and it's been without purpose or unnecessary, I would say, so I wouldn't feel positive about what's about to occur.
I've never really had an urge to, like, if something was going wrong, I don't think my first instinct would be to call the police.
I've had limited experience with the police, but the experiences that I've had with the police have not been wholly positive. I mean, the police in the community where I'm from are not prominent figures within the community. You don't see them often, but when you do, people tend to have a negative association with them. I wouldn't say the police have a wholly positive presence within the community, and they're quite distant, detached. They're not seen as being approachable.
There was this one scenario where a policeman even tried to fight me because he got the wrong person and then I was not having it. So they try basically forcefully push me away, try tasing me. From there, just been thinking different about the whole force.
To be fair, I've only been stopped and searched once, and I didn't have anything on me. But like the other guy said, I ran still anyway. You just don't want to harass me. You never know what they're gonna cause you problems. You know what I'm saying? They don't really make me feel safe.
Do you feel protected by the police?
In certain ways, yes. I feel like with the experiences I've had, my way of it is that I've always been favoured, so to speak. So me personally, I feel like the chances of anything going wrong with the police is a lot lower than it would be for other individuals. However, police in general, I don't think you could ever feel fully protected by someone when there is so much corruption inside all of them. I feel like in terms of me being a young white girl, plays a very big part on it. I've been in so many situations where I know for a fact that if I was a young black boy, it would have gone completely different. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen me being with a group of white kids and me being with a group of anyone else. And every single time it's handled so differently. Never once have I had a heated encounter when it's just me and other white people.
Yeah, in terms of police in Croydon, so when I was a lot younger, it was a lot trickier because, for example, I remember one day I was heading like to school for an exam, whatever, and then at the bus stop outside the Caribbean shop, they just done like this random lineup, and then a bunch of us were all just backs against the wall, and I missed half my exam just because of this unnecessary lineup, whatever. But then, weirdly, for years, I managed to be stop and search proof. I don't know how that happened. I stopped wearing tracksuits as much. I try to figure out different strategies. And it's only about 3 years ago, I'm on Thornton Heath High Street, like near the train station, in like these bright colored shoes. And I think it might even had teddy bears or something, like Jeremy Scott's. And I see two police officers and they're like, hey, you fit a description. I just laughed. I just laughed. I was like, of course. And then they laughed with me. And then it was kind of surreal because that whole moment only lasted like 30 seconds. And like, I don't know, I think we even like shook each other's hands. But I don't know, I think maybe in terms of the irony of the moment, we just was able to get through it. But I don't know, it's kind of weird, but I guess I kind of learned not to take them seriously. And I kind of learned also, if I see the police, because a lot of times you just be going about your life and you see a police van or whatever, and sometimes they're just looking, they're just like trying to find an excuse. And I'm just like, if I have nothing to be guilty of, why should I act guilty? Why should I act guilty? Why should I act guilty?
I think there's a lot of work to do, to be honest. I think you know, there's quite a distant relationship between young people and the police. You know, it's almost like they're two different people on either side of a fence, and there's no gap between that fence from which they can, you know, reconcile or connect. And I think one way that I think would be really good would be, you know, to start a conversation or discussion with the police and the young people, where they get to, you know, see each other beyond those, you know, preconceptions or misconceptions that they may have of each other. So, you know, seeing the police as more than being just, you know, people in uniform, because that can sometimes be considered as a guard and it can put people off. You know, see them people beyond that. You know, they might be parents, they might be, you know, leaders within the community. They, you know, see the positivity that they bring as part of their profession, and get young people involved in, you know, battling issues that, you know, involve crime, because I think that people assume that young people aren't concerned about crime and safety when they are.
I'll say they need to consider restoration of justice. I don't know how other people might understand justice, but being just is just like being fair to something. If it is what it is, it is what it is. I think it's time they review themselves and you know, their work policing in the community to figure out what they think they're doing that is beyond their powers, what they're doing wrong. Because obviously, if you're told to do something and you go beyond borders, you have to know. You know it's something you will know yourself. It's not like someone has to tell you before you know what you're doing. They need to review that, the way they patrol and all that. I mean, it's good, but you can't just stop anyone because you just perceive they are drug dealers or carry knives or something like that, unless you have some type of evidence backing that, and then you can do what you're doing.
What I think more so is that when a lot of people see the police, there's initially like a clench up, a tense, and almost like ready for this back and forth, this natural hostility. It's just kind of like, let's get rid of the whole superiority complex, because if you really want to police and to protect and serve whatever, you're not really serving the people when you're coming at them with a particular attitude. And in terms of how you come across, that's just so important. So if the police learn just about how to communicate and remember that they're still humans, not thinking that they're above others, that in itself can build more trust.
The police have been engaging in events that bridge the gap between themselves and young people through community activities, and we hope that this continues for the long run. Which brings the question, what do you hope for the future of justice in the UK, policing systems, and relationships between yourself and the police?
Everybody's gonna think about this. Everybody's gonna think about that. Nobody wants to hear what we say.